skimmers. Just a plastic basket to catch any sort of surface debris. Obviously there's nothing really. Being an indoor pool, these should never really have anything that's, unless it's a foreign object, somebody drops something, hair ties or whatever, because normally the big culprit for these is tree debris on an outdoor pool. You're not going to have that here, so these should always be fairly clean unless people are stuffing something. I know that given the clientele here, it probably shouldn't be an issue. Big things that make these work are these front doors here. It's called a weir, and so that actually has foam in it and it floats, and so it's always good to check those, because what makes it have a skimming motion is that weir floats up and allows just the very top, whatever's floating on top of the water, to come in here and get caught in this basket. So it's always good to move them up. You'll actually be able to watch the water level start dropping, and then all that water will rush in, and that's how it's supposed to operate. Have freedom of motion. You guys have two of these, one here in the shallow end and another one there in the deep end. Per commercial code, they always have to have hardware in them, so just always make sure you put the screws in. This is firmly seated on there, so we know it's catching your toes on or anything.
There's two pipes in the bottom. One's capped off, the other's for hooking your hose up to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll do that in a little bit. We'll go over cleaning.
For your tools. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe I'll put a little bit there. Otherwise, when operation pool lights, again, being indoors, really don't need them. State inspector likes to see them anytime it's dark outside. You know, you're getting natural light plus artificial light, so your lumens in the background are going to be fine. You guys just run these all the time, but at the very minimum, have them on at night. Otherwise, you will. If you catch it, if your local inspector ever sees them off, doesn't feel there's enough lumens in here, she may make you put them on a timer. So at the very least, flip them on at night, or just leave them on all the time. They're LED, you should be able to run for a while. Another thing on your inspection, your yearly inspection, is they'll want to test to make sure that's GFCI protected. They did not do it at the breaker, they did it through this outlet that's right next to it. So you test that, those should go off just like that. So that's something that they'll want to check when they come to their yearly inspection. And they should if they're doing their job anyway. Move over here. Got everything labeled, skimmer and main drain. 90% of your contaminants in a pool that can cause bodily harm are at the surface. It's going to be any sort of debris or anything that's floating on that top inch of water. So we always want to run your skimmer valve open and actually throttle back your main drain. If you're brushing stuff, if there's a lot of dirt on the floor, you brush it to the main drain, you can reverse these, pull more off the drain and less off the skimmer so that it sucks that debris up. For the most part, it's a good operating level. It's always going to be kind of 50% on one and all on the other. We put a redundant valve here to shut off. The state makes you have two, so that way, if that's really dirty and you need to pressure wash it out or do some sort of cleaning, you can always keep your pool circulating. They never want your pool not to be circulating, and especially up here if there's people in it. The reason you lock this guy, or shut this guy, is to avoid all the water going back to the pool, because right now, all of this stuff is obviously above the pool level, and the pump will lose prime. It'll always reprime itself, because we're only about 12 inches above, but it's just easier on the pump if you can avoid ever losing prime. Everything has safety switches, so this right now is going into alarm mode, so there's no flow. That's the flow cell, that's your chemical feeder. That is what controls the chemical feeders that are in the other room. Keeps your chemicals at the proper levels for state code. Your 1 to 3 parts per million of chlorine, your 7 to 1 to 7.5 pH. Your heater also will have a flow switch on it. So this heater is on fire right now because there's no flow as well. Another time you can shut off the pump, just do everything while the pump is on. This working your way this way through your pump. You get to your multi-port valve, which controls the water flow in or around your filter. So right now it's on filter mode. You can press down here and go to backwash, which is going to, right now the water on a normal filter goes in the top, filters through the sand, gets sucked out the bottom, clean water, returned to the pool. Backwash, this valve actually reverses it. Flows water up through the bottom, gets all the dirt off the top, and takes that to waste over there. Do a quick little backwash, just like that. Open your valves back up, put your pump on. Always check your gauges. make sure that's another way of checking and making sure that your valves are open and you know you didn't forget something. And that's why state code makes you put them before any valves, so that way you can't get a false reading. When you're backwashing, you'll look for clear water. You can clearly see through there that that's clear. There's also a secondary sight glass right here on the side of the multi-port. So you just backwash till the water's clear, shut it down. When you shut the pump down, you can just shut one. Keep the water rushing back. You don't always have to do two. There is a rinse cycle. It's not necessary, but it's good. Just to settle, it kind of settles all the sand back, and will keep getting any sand, minimize any sand that might get shaken up and sent out the pipes of the pool. That can be, again, so clear, or just, 30 seconds, so we tell people 20 to 30 seconds. Go back to filter. This spider gasket in here is rubber, has a plastic moving piece. So we always try to go in the same direction every time, so you're not constantly going back and forth and you might get a wrinkle or a tear in that gasket. Just a good housekeeping.
I told me the other day that you go back to the filter, wait for 30 seconds to a minute, everything is set.
Yeah, if you don't do the rinse, that's a good thing, or even if you do, it helps just kind of compress everything. Working our way through the filter. Flow meter, this pool is designed, it'll show in your O&M manual, this thing's designed for 104 gallons a minute. For flow, we're getting about 108 to 110 on there. So good there. If you see this way down, the 90s, you should also see a lot of pressure here, which just means your filter's backed up. The filter's fine, but your flow's way down, you've got a restriction somewhere else between the suction and pressure side. We have to do a little investigating there. Work it up, heater bypass. We have flow arrows showing, you've got your water coming to your heater, and then going through the heater, getting heated, coming back. State code comes to have incoming and outgoing heaters, so you'll see how many degrees you're gaining going through the heater. Water comes back here. This is the bypass. I put a mark on there. That just seems to be a good level. So you also have to have a mixed temperature thermometer down here. The more water you let go through the bypass, it mixes the water that's coming back from the heater. It keeps all the water at an acceptable level. If we were pushing all the water through the heater going to the pool could be fairly warm. And so you kind of want to pick up a few degrees but flow a lot of water versus gain 15 to 20 degrees and only flow a little bit. Because then that water going back to the pool could be really hot, could be uncomfortable for patrons. Moving back from your heater return, you've got your chemical supplies. You go through the other room, we'll have to do that later. That's what this bypass is for. Those have small pumps on them, so you have to get differential pressure to force the water over to that room to those pumps so they can do their thing. So that's what this bypass valve is here for. It's set specifically for that to allow try and push more water to that room when it's needed. Those just come back through here, return. Water comes back through here. Last piece of equipment in this part of the room is the autofill, which was actually just on because it's backwash. When the autofill is on and it's working properly, this is what you'll see. This means it doesn't need any water. If the sensor light is on, it may come on intermittently if there's people in the pool. This has to receive a constant signal for, I believe it's 8 to 10 seconds, and then it'll tell it to fill. So it has a delay, so it's not constantly kicking on and off. When the filling light is green, it means it's filling, and so that means this solenoid here is open. If the filling light is red, it means it's timed out. So if you guys ever have a fecal accident or any reason to drain the pool way down, the autofill will kick on, or will also time out. They have safety features. I believe the factory at 30 minutes, they can be 30, 60, 90, or 120. And so it seems to be draining the pool a lot. We can come back, take this apart, put some jumper wires in there, but for the most part, people are just fine. Another way to do it is just reset it. You can just unplug it and then reset that timer internally. Again, if you have a fecal accident or any reason to drain the pool way down, the solenoid has a manual valve on it. All you do is just manually manipulate this solenoid, turn it to the left, and that'll bypass the electronic feature and just allow water to flow in there. Heater's pretty self-explanatory, just general temperature on it. I don't know how hands-on you guys get as maintenance guys, but I will throw this out to you because it is your full-time job, so you may be pretty curious. There will come lights on here if there's ever issues. We have service heater, service system, and heating. Heating is just if it's actively heating. Service system, if that light or service heater comes on, it'll blink in codes. If you actually take this front panel off, there is the pad on the back side. It'll illuminate a light for whatever code that means. So it's always abbreviated. It'll be in the operator's manual, and it's always some sort of a sensor. Flow sensor, high temp sensor, low temp sensor, burner sensor, things like that. But you know, if you want to do a little digging on your own, if not, call us. But that's always the first step to diagnosing those guys, is figure out the light will come on, and then you take this off, and then there'll also be a code lit on the back side of that card. This is still in feed delay. It doesn't want to feed chemicals in case the pump's not going.
You're saying like 8 minutes or something?
Yeah, it's down to 6 now. It's 10 minutes automatically. So we'll come back and deal with that. We'll run over to the equipment room or the chemical room. Acid, solid state chlorine feeders. They take pucks. I'll take the bucket. It's never recommended to handle chemicals by hand, but the point of these is to be extremely safe. We handle them by hand all the time. Just make sure to wash your hands after. And more importantly, since you guys have both solid state acid and solid state chlorine, make sure red pucks go in the red feeder, blue pucks go in the blue feeder. If you mix them, it actually makes chlorine gas, which is one of the more deadly elements.
This is really bad.
Yeah, one of the more deadly elements known to the world. So that's a big no-no. They put stickers on the tops of them to warn you of that. These are a fairly simple system. You put the pucks in. That one actually has 2 parts, so maybe we'll start with that one. You can just envision it on this one. So basically this top part is removable. All this is a holding container for the pucks. Below here you have a toilet valve, essentially, and it shoots water up onto the pucks, and a chlorine solution then drips down that eroded from the pucks. And so down here is a holding tank, kind of like a toilet, of chlorine solution. When the feeder says it needs chlorine or pH, it comes to this box, which is non-tamperable. This just sends the control voltage. These are hot, so these systems will not work if either one of these is off. So this is your pump hot, your hot to your pump, and then your control voltage telling the pump to kick on. So when it needs chlorine, it would receive a control signal. This pump will turn on, pump water back to the pool, lowering the water in here and triggering that toilet valve to come back on and keep making more chlorine solution until the pool reaches the level that the controller says it needs to be.
You know what that is?
What's that?
That's a puck bidet.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty much. That's exactly how it operates. And this guy is the exact same, but it is just one contained unit. About the bottom of the floor is about right here, probably right here for those guys. And so it's just a little easier or a little harder to envision. When these are working, when they kick on, the flow meter will come up and you'll be able to see how many gallons per minute of solution you're making on both of them. If it's really low, they are adjustable. There's a gate valve after the pump. You can turn that up or down. It's kind of a fine hand tuning because you got to match your flow coming in or your flow going out. Otherwise, you'll constantly starve the pump and it'll get air and it won't fill. And then this will fill up and stop. And then the pump will get prime again and it shoots a whole bunch of water back. And it repeats that cycle basically until it wears on the seals of the pump and you need a new pump. So it takes a little bit of hand tuning on those guys, but they're set right now and run the way they're supposed to. There are cleaning loops installed on them. The acid feeders never really need them. The chlorine feeders do. Basically, once a year we can do it, or it's in the manual for them. You just dump a cleaning solution in them, which it says what to use in the manual for them. And you shut your top valves and open the bypass valve in between them over there, and then the pump just recirculates water on itself and just kind of cleans itself out. And that's about it over here. Yeah, not that it has anything to do with us, but you have your exhaust vent just to keep chemical fumes to a minimum. When you take these lids off, the normal acid solution is about 35% for a pool. The acid solution this makes is less than 1. So these are very safe, but still, you know, don't go in for a whiff like it's a candle. There are still, the chlorine's bad, the acid isn't as bad. The chlorine is a little higher percentage, so. Yeah, the state mandates you take 2 manual tests a day with 30 minutes before you open and around the time it closed. It has a guide up here. Everything is sort of a chemistry reaction. It's going to be generally color. It's going to be what everything changes. There's multiple steps, multiple chemicals. We have these chlorine, the chemical controllers have a port right on them, so you can be as accurate as possible. You can compare your manual tests to what the controller's reading. So you just use that little valve right there, fill it up to whatever it says, and go by the step-by-step in here. For example, pH is just a single step. Do that one quick. Some of them are as many as 4. Calcium, I believe, is the most labor-intensive, if I remember right.
Boy, I remember doing that in our pool. We'd dip the thing into the pool and shake it up. So many drops, it was like 4 drops or something like that.
Yep, pH is 4, yep. Invert it. Match your color, about 7.1, 7.2. 7.3, 7.4, something like that, just to make sure the controller's full. Let's say that chlorine is the most important one. Make sure I'm getting my water right.
Yeah, when he took them the other day, he took the sample out of the pool instead of the port. Yeah, that's what they've been doing.
Instead of right here. Yeah. People always look at you funny if there's people in the pool and you're sitting here doing this.
Yep.
They were a little more amber, so you're right around that 7.3, 7.4 color. They say females have better color than males.
Yeah. There you go. Hire a female to do this.
Get a second opinion, you know, instead of playing female.
Yep.
But that has steps for ORP, which is not a direct reading of chlorine, so it's 835. You could say 835 today, you could say 835 tomorrow, but your actual parts per million chlorine is different because there's more than one chemical that goes into that calculation. So don't solely rely on that. pH and chlorine are the only ones you have to do daily. Calcium is every 2 weeks, I think, as well as alkalinity, something like that. And then you guys are supposed to do a water test to the city every month. Yeah, every month. And that is not for anything Taylor test kit here can do.
I know when he was here the other day, he ended up.
Yeah, 2 different vacuum attachments here. They go in your hole. This is what they would call a traditional gunite tool. This tries to create somewhat of a seal around the floor. The other one here has brushes on it. For something that's being stubborn, you can try and scrub it and vacuum it at the same time. The only real caveat to these guys is the blue end has a swivel on it. And so you always want to make sure you put the blue end on the vacuum. Otherwise you'd be fighting that thing all day, trying to bend it into corners and stuff, and it won't want to go where you want to put it. As far as hooking that up to the pool, you always want to fill the hose with water. I always, since you have one inlet right next to the skimmer right here, I just blow water through them. And then at the bottom of the skimmer, I can take that skimmer back apart and show you it. Oh, yeah. This is what we call one thing. We're using for winterization as well as cleaning. But to get maximum suction, because the skimmers are tied together equally, you have to block one to get complete suction. Otherwise, it'll just pull harder off the other one. So at the bottom of these skimmers, there's 2 pipes. One of them is capped. It's the front one. And that's because back in old pools, they would have what they call an equalizer pipe. So the pool would never suck air. So there's 2 ports down in there. The front one's plugged, the back one's the one you need. You hook your hose up once you fill it up with water to the back one. And then the other one They go in there and put this guy in there, and it should pull it down, but it also has threads on it. You can thread it in there. Yep. Yep, these skimmers really haven't changed much. Pretty common technology. Yeah, in the old days, so you wouldn't get air, the front pipe would go back to the pool, and that way if the water level got low from evaporation or whatever, the water could just flood in through that pipe